my heels, told Lewis's story in his own words. At that time, Universal bought the rights with the talk of Tony Curtis playing Lewis. Then we fast forward to today. More than a half a century later, we have the producer, Matthew Baer, who has been working on the film of Louie's life for the past 16 years. As a result, it's been his honor and privilege knowing Lewis and his family extremely well. Come this Christmas, the dream of telling Louie's story will become a reality with the release of the movie Unbroken. I'd like to invite the Unbroken producer, Matthew Baer, to share some remarks. Matthew?
In the book, Outliers, a theory is suggested that the key to success in any line of work is practicing a specific task for 10,000 hours. These past 16 years, it feels closer to 1,000,000 hours I've spent practicing and learning about Louis Zamperini. Thankfully, our specific task to get a movie made on Lou's remarkable life has been achieved. The marathon began in 1998 upon my seeing footage of the 81-year-old Torrance tornado running the Olympic torch in Japan, where he was once held captive. Lou's radiant smile had me at hello, as did his story. From our first meeting onward, Lou, his son-in-law Mick, and I bonded in trust, and off we went to sell Lou's amazing journey to Universal Studios. I became and remain the one and only Jewish Zamperini. Lou and my 47-year age difference was made irrelevant by a shared sense of humor, and I was the only person who loved talking about Louie's story more than Louie did himself. Like a long married couple or stand-up comedy team, when meeting with writers or executives or filmmakers, I knew exactly what story Lou was going to tell, how he would deliver his punchline, or how to best answer questions on his behalf. Lou certainly understood the creative challenges his life story held, trying to fit it all into one movie. As I became the determined salesman with my suitcase of Lou's story inside, Lou was always my biggest cheerleader, with patience born from tolerating much more pain than anyone could imagine. "Keep at it, my boy," was his refrain, in the same spirit Lou's brother Pete told him when Lou needed one more push. When anyone asked Lou for insight into how he pulled off his wildly long life, he'd always say a positive attitude, which then segued into how blood corpuscles favorably increased in the body based on one's upbeat state of mind. In 2002, a letter arrived that profoundly changed both of our lives and significantly encouraged our attitude to remain positive about the dream of having his film made. "Dear Master Zamperini, my name is Laura Hillenbrand, and I am the author of a new book, Seabiscuit, an American Legend. In my career as a historian and author, I have never come across a story touched by such hardship, perseverance, and grace. If you would be interested in my writing your biography, I would be overjoyed." Lou asked my opinion. I naturally said, why not? Having been satisfied with his 1956 autobiography, Lou told me his response to Laura was going to be, "Well, look, lady, I already wrote my book. But if you want to do yours, go ahead." Obviously, Laura did go ahead. On March 21st of last year, Unbroken, the movie, had finally been greenlit. And so I made a call I longed to make after 15 years. Louie picked up, knowing it was okay to answer my number, seeing it on his gigantic phone display. With his patented energy, he said, "Hello, Matt." I was able to say, "Lou, I have amazing news. Unbroken is going to be made. Congratulations." "Well, isn't that great news?" Lou replied. "Congratulations to you too, pal." That was the most meaningful call I've ever had the good fortune to make. Several years ago, I came to Lou's house for a check-in visit. The pilgrimage was always the same. I looked through the front window. If I saw him at his round table in the study waiting for me, I came in. If Lou were in the kitchen or bedroom, I'd knock. But on this particular day, as I reached his round table, I saw a striking image. Lou Zamperini, the man who punched sharks, was in his underwear. It was the first and only time I'd seen Lou out of his daily uniform of tan pants, blue Olympic jacket, sneakers, and USC hat. The view was indeed eye-catching. Imagining a similar feeling to what 96-year-old versions of superheroes, Bruce Wayne or Peter Parker, looked outside of their Batman and Superman uniforms, what I saw was a razor-thin man whose skin clung to his frame with the texture of old silk pulled tightly. And so we chatted for our usual hour or so. Though this visit defined the friendship we'd achieved, Lou was comfortable hanging out with me in his t-shirt and briefs, at ease with himself as Lou always was. In Unbroken, Laura wrote, "Resting in the shade and stillness, Louie felt profound peace. When he thought of his history, what resonated with him now was not all that he had suffered, but the divine love that he believed had intervened to save him. Lou indeed loved fully his family, his friends, Torrance, the #1 combo at El Cholo, his USC Trojans, his never-ending flirting, his mother's gnocchi, Stouffer's frozen dinners, his view overlooking the city, and how his ultimate underdog story and courage helped others overcome their own obstacles. What Lou saw as his salvation through the words of Billy Graham, I saw in Lou as the prophet of inspiration. I will think of him every day, as I have since the day we met. While my heart is indeed broken, we won't get to see Louie on the red carpet. His spirit and love of life will remain unbroken for eternity. And when my two sons need that extra hand of loving kindness and support, I will say what my dear friend Lou said to me: keep at it, keep at it.
Louie was born the same year Torrance High School opened its doors, 1917. In his youth, he was a juvenile delinquent, stealing pies, cigarettes, and liquor, ringing church bells. In the middle of the night, he would awaken his neighbors. He'd get in fights. He'd shoot spitwads at girls in his class. You name it, he did it. What began as a career of running from the cops got Louie selected to be one of the 334 American athletes to go to the 1936 Berlin Olympic Games. With his older brother, Pete, with his paddle in hand, encouragement, Louie eventually learned to channel his bad boy energies into the running that he did. While Torrance High School, he blew away the competition. He set the new scholastic mile record of 4 minutes and 21.2 seconds. This stood for 19 years. Lewis put Torrance on the map. As noted in the 1935, January 31st, 1935, Torrance Herald newspaper, this is their quotes. This is what they wrote. Whether Torrance realizes it or not, this recognition of Louie Zamperini as the leading Torrance High School miler in the United States means a lot to the community. It means the City of Torrance will be mentioned in the worldwide dispatches every time that Louie goes out for a major track and meet. Every other follower of sports in this and every other country in the world reads about the black-haired, smiling youth from Torrance. A little city, this is 1935, a little city that practically unknown outside the radius of 100 miles or so, or until Zamperini put us on the world map of sports. At this time, I'd like to invite to the microphone Gail Morgan, the president of the Torrance High School Alumni Association, to share a few words.
Thank you, Mayor Scotto, and thank you all of you to be here. Okay, Cynthia, you're not going to be the only one who's going to have a hard time getting through this. I had nearly 30 years of friendship with this wonderful, wonderful man. In the fall of 2006, I got my wonderful Louie, he called me, and he asked me if I knew what was going to happen to him in January of 2007. Well, of course I knew what was going to happen to him. He was going to turn 90. He surprised me by saying that he wanted to have his 90th birthday party at Torrance High, and would the Torrance High Alumni Association please host it? Of course, we were going to do it. I asked John O'Brien. He said, what do you think I'm going to say? So we went about it. The logistics of getting Louie to Torrance High was a dilemma, but I have to thank a fellow Tartar and a Baer for volunteering to get a limo and go up and get Louie. I understand I made Frank's dream come true that day. He got to spend time with Louie. You're welcome, Frank. And thank you, Cindy, my fellow Tartar. So, after I got the limo from Frank and Cindy, I thought, I have this little idea. So I called Chief John New. He had told me at one time, anytime I needed something, to call him. So I did. I said, John, we all know the history of Louie with Torrance Police Department. I'd like to do something. We all do, don't we? There wasn't a time that Louie ever didn't love to tell us about the story of him in Torrance Police Department and a few other police departments. So I asked John if he could make this wish come true, and he said, consider it done. My wish was that when the limo came into Torrance, that the Torrance Police Department would escort Louie to Torrance High. I thought it was about time to say, welcome to Torrance, Louie. So the limo comes to Torrance, he gets his escort. The limo pulls up at Torrance High. Pete comes out, Sylvia comes out, everybody comes out. The last one out is Louie. He bounds out and he's smiling and he's happy. And he grabs me by the arm, and with such enthusiasm, with that twinkle in his eye, and with the love in his heart, he said, did you see that? Did you see that? Did you see what happened? And I said, okay, what's he talking about? Because there was so much going on that day. He says, the Torrance police escorted me into town. They escorted me into town. They welcomed me into town. And I said, yes, Louie, I know they did. So he went about greeting everybody, having a grand time. Pete came up and told me, you don't know how much that means to us. Later in the day, cutting the cake, taking the pictures, telling the stories, everything that we did, Louie came up to me and told me the best birthday gift he got that day. Sorry. was the escort to the police department. I couldn't believe that this simple little silly idea that I had meant so much to him. Pete called me that night and said, "You don't understand the history that he had with the PD. That he finally was welcomed to Torrance and to Torrance High." I know it took a while, but I think we did the right thing. On Louie's last visit to Torrance High, Jim, Standifer, and his son Carl went and got Louie and brought him. When I greeted Louie, it was kind of funny. He grabbed me and he goes, "What, no police escort?" I looked at him and I said, "Oh gosh, I'm so sorry, Louie, I forgot." He goes, "That's okay." I have to say that one of the things that I learned from dear Louis, it's not the grandiose gestures. It's not the fireworks or anything like that. It's the simple things. The simple gift of having a police escort meant so much to him, and he talked to me about it, and Pete talked to me about it. I truly learned that it's the little things in life, the little things that people do for you that mean so much. They can make grand gestures, but when they remember something that meant something so much to you, that's what counts. To the Zamperini family, thank you so much for sharing your Louie with us. We loved him so much. I know that he is here, and each and every one of you, you say that Louie's your hero, that you believe in his spirit, that you understand who he is. Go out and represent Louie the best way you can. Be loving, be kind, be forgiving, and I thank you all so very much for being here.
Thank you, Gail. And as you can tell, we're telling you a little story of Louie's life by the people that knew him the best. You know, I was very fortunate in 2000 to meet Louie the first time, and she brought up I was going to tell you later, but she brought up the fact that in 2007 I was so fortunate to go to his home, and I got to spend the afternoon with him, and let me tell you, that was an experience of a lifetime. I got to do a lot of great things being the mayor of the City of Torrance, but I got to tell you, that ranks right up there at the top. To see a man that was so humble in his home with trophies and awards all around him, that just amazing. So, Gail, thank you. After the war, Louie was tormented by nightmares. The Bird, as he was called, the sadistic prison guard who singled him out for punishment day in and day out. To ease the memories that haunted him, he began to drink heavily. At his wife's urging, he wanted to save his marriage, so he went to see evangelist Billy Graham. Reluctantly and bitterly, he listens. He took heart to what was said, and every night committed himself to God, forever leaving behind his nightmares, alcoholism, and resentment. Louie made a promise to share his journey from delinquency to Olympian, from POW to drinking, from nightmares to conversation. His mission was to inspire and help people by leading a life of good example, quiet strength, and potential influence. Louie had a way of changing lives. Through his inspiration and capacity for forgiveness that was divine in nature. In 1952, Louie started the Victory Boys Camp, which helped juveniles and delinquents find their path in life. The last boy that he saved is Kyle Gunther. Kyle's here to share a few of his story with you now. Kyle, come up, please.
When I met Louie 6 months ago, he signed a copy of the Unbroken book and gave it to me. Inside the cover of the book, he wrote, "Be Hardy," in his signature. this time that he did this, I was at his beautiful house in the Hollywood Hills, which was jam-packed with stuff from the war and the Olympics, and just a collection of planes and awesome things that stapled an eventful life. Plus, this guy was telling me stories of things he did in his life that I'd always dreamed of doing. Louie was like the definition of a man. I mean, have you seen the trailer for that new movie? He's like the William Wallace of World War II. I was meeting Louie because I was caught up in what he referred to as a whirlwind of drugs. And I had been accepted to a school in Australia called Youth with a Mission. It is a school that equips young people to pursue God and share the world with what they know. There's only one problem. I pretty much hated God, or at least the idea I had of God. Louie had known of the school and heard about me through his son Luke and Luke's wife Lisa, and he wanted to pay the way for the school for me. I was broke and soon to be headed for the grave, so Louie giving me thousands of dollars was quite the opportunity for me. I didn't really understand why he'd want to, but I just let that be. When I first looked up that word hardy that he wrote in my book, I saw the definition strong and sturdy, which is exactly what I saw of Louie from the outside. I saw this athletic star, war veteran, who had been through more pain and struggle than I can ever say I'd been close to. I saw a man that would let nothing break him. But then I met the guy, and he has this peaceful, soft, humble heart that didn't match what my idea of hardy was. Not once did he tell stories of his life as to make himself look good, or to show me how strong or sturdy he was, and not once did he even bring up the thousands of dollars he was giving me. He simply said, "Glory to God," and left me with a book that said, "Be hardy." I wasn't even sure what that word meant anymore. After meeting Louie and seeing what kind of man he was after that kind of life, I started to change. That night was the start of me wondering what there was in this world that he knew and I didn't, and what it meant to be hardy. Going to Australia was the hardest thing I'd ever done. When I got there, I was trying so hard to fix myself, and I was still believing in the strong and sturdy answer that if I just had enough willpower and strength, I could change. Nothing I did or tried or said worked, though, because I couldn't forgive myself for the life I had ruined and couldn't stop doing the things that ruined it. In Australia, I was living with a bunch of kids that all had the same heart that Louie had. And I was so angry why they could all be so happy and I was so broken trying to put myself back together. I gave up. I quit trying to fix myself with my own self. That's when I remembered the one thing that Louie repeatedly said through that night. I met him. He kept saying, "Glory to God." I could finally hear and understand what Louie and these kids were telling me and why they were the way they were. That word hardy comes from an old French word. It's defined as to become bold. That's what Louie meant. He didn't want me to be rough and tough enough to figure things out for myself. He wanted me to become bold and daring enough to admit that I couldn't figure things out for myself. Bold enough to admit to oneself and others that only Christ can change one heart enough to forgive oneself for the life of destruction and failure. Or to forgive an army of Japanese officers that used to torture you, letting go of pride and giving it up to God. That's the reason Louie had the heart he did and lived the way he did, because he knew everything that happened on this life and everything he had was only by the grace of God. 60 years ago, the same experience I had in Australia happened to Louie, and he promised God, "I will serve you forever." He stuck to that promise, and as a result of him giving his life to God, I'm the one of many people that can make that promise today also. In the Bible it says, "You are..." In the Bible it says, "You are a new creation if you are in Christ." If you struggle with believing in God, look at my life. Look at Louie's life. We truly became new creations to the life we were before. And when we became bold and stayed hardy, we became new creations. Thank you. It's an honor to speak here. Thank you for coming.
For Louie, age did not define friendship. Another young life changed by Louie's story of survival, resentment, and redemption was revealed in the book Unbroken by my musician, Alex Katuncha. Got it close, didn't I? Alex is here to share his story with you right now. Alex, come on up.
Yeah, Katunich, it sounds like a sneeze. It says here that I'm a musician, which is true, actually. It could have very easily said that I'm a father, a recovering drug addict and alcoholic, a Leo who likes long walks on the beach, many other things. Like most of you, I'm not summed up by one thing, and certainly Louie was not summed up by any one thing or one word. I want to thank, first of all, the Zamperini family for giving me the honor of speaking to you today. I believe in serendipity. I didn't used to believe in that. I thought everything was perhaps just coincidence, but let me tell you how I got here, and I don't mean the 405. 2.5 years ago, I checked myself into a medical detox facility because I was killing myself. I was heavily addicted to drugs and alcohol, and I did not see a way out of that. My wife at the time had suggested that I do something. I knew that I needed to do something, and what I did was make that difficult decision to go through the physical pain and the emotional pain of coming off of drugs. Prior to locking myself in this facility, stopped at the bookstore with my dad, and he had just finished reading Unbroken. And he said to me, you know, you're going to have a little bit of time on your hands, and assuming that perhaps you can stop shaking, you might want to read this. And read it I did. And what was amazing for me was that a guy who had no faith in anything, no faith in himself, no faith in others, let alone faith in a power greater than myself, could come to discover that in the midst of thinking that I was dying, and yet somehow knowing that I wasn't gonna, and being bummed out about it. I knew what true suffering was. I learned what forgiveness was. Perhaps most importantly, I learned that I wasn't the most important thing in the whole wide world. What can I do for somebody else? Is the message that I took away from the story of Louie's life. What can I do to make your life better? How can I be selfless? And how can I lead by example? We've heard a lot of amazing stories today. The number one theme that keeps reoccurring to me is a man who truly led by example. My challenge to all of you is this: what are you going to do from this day forward to make a difference in somebody else's life? What are you going to do to lead by example? I'm sure Louie would be absolutely flattered that everyone's here, and he would smile and joke about it. If you want to pay tribute to this man, make a difference in someone else's life. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Alex. So nobody's startled here, there will be a gunshot in a second, okay? Starting gun. Torrance High School holds 2 events at Zamperini Stadium honoring Louie. At the annual Zamperini Youth Track Meet, kids K-8, established in 2000, and the Louie Zamperini Invitation for High School Track and Field Team began in 2007. You know, I didn't tell you, Louie has a tendency to give a nickname to everybody, and I'm not going to tell you the nickname he gave me, but he gave me one. And these guys over here know it, so I'm surprised somebody didn't bring it up. When Louie was in high school, he was not aware that anyone other than his buddies and the principal knew him, let alone known his name. However, when he started running, the first time he heard the students chanting, "Louie, Louie, Louie," he liked the recognition so much, he committed to the sport of running. He was known as the boy with the fastest finish. The Torrance High School track distance runners will now run 2 laps, memorializing Louie's smile.
On your mark.
Doing research for her book, Seabiscuit, she continued to cross paths with another named Louie Zamperini. Often it was said that Seabiscuit might be the only one who could beat Louie Zamperini. She made a note to herself to look up this guy, Louie Zamperini, after she completed her book on Seabiscuit. When Laura called Louie and said she wanted to tell a story, he explained it, and it's already been told. I already wrote my book, Devil to My Heels, but she persisted, and he relented. After 7 years in the making, Unbroken was finally released in 2010, and remained on the Torrance bestseller list now for 178 weeks, and 14 weeks as #1 and counting. Unbroken is written so vividly that when Louie read it, he had to keep looking up to make sure he still wasn't in the prison camp. Really got excited when he was running his final lap, and he hear people chanting, "Louie, Louie, 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 Louie." Got a little taste of what it looked like in 1934, 35, and 36 when Louie was running on this track. So now I'd like to invite up Debbie Hayes from the Torrance Historical Society, and a friend of Lewis will now read Laura Hildebrandt's eulogy.
Italian Stallion. That was Lewis's nickname for our mayor. It's just something you should know. Louie and I began and ended in laughter. I went to him drawn by the almost unimaginably dramatic and often harrowing events of his life. But when he spoke, something surprised and captivated me even more than his history. As he told of a war ordeal of profound suffering, in his voice there was no mournfulness, no self-pity, no bitterness, no anger. Instead, he was cheerful, buoyant, sparklingly witty. I'll be an easier subject than Seabiscuit, he says, because I can talk. If anything defined Louie, it was that. What made his life transcendent, what made it resonate in millions of hearts was not the hardship he encountered, but the way in which he greeted it, how he turned it to joy, and what that told the rest of us about the potential that sleeps within ourselves. For all its grueling trials, his life was not a sad story because he wouldn't allow it to be. His story was his gift to us. He scattered every talk we had with laughter, from our first hello to his last sing-song, I love you, I love you. Every word he shared with me was infused in joy. In my hard hours, he was my steadying hand. In my happy hours, he was my gentle reminder to be alive to my blessings, to be grateful for them, to share them as he did his. Because I knew him, I see my world, my struggles, my bliss, my dreams differently, and my life is richer, deeper, sweeter. When I learned he was gone, I thought of the words written by Maya Angelou. And when great souls die, after a period, peace blooms, slowly and always, irregularly. Spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration. Our senses, restored, never to be the same, whisper to us, they existed, they existed. We can be and be better, for they existed. Who among us hasn't persevered, hasn't seen a broader horizon of possibility, hasn't seen light in darkness because Louie existed? And in the way in which we are all changed for knowing him, doesn't he still live? I feel him now among us, young again, his strong legs reaching and pushing, his great lungs drawing in sweet air, his grand, bounding heart beating, beating, beating. Listen, you can hear his laughter.
And grace will lead me home.
I'd really like to thank everyone for joining us today to pay tribute to the life of our national hero, Louie Zamperini. A special thank you goes to Louie Zamperini's family for joining us today, Louie's friends, World War II vets, his colleagues, all those who made this evening happen. And now I'd like to call upon the Torrance Police Department, the Torrance Fire Department, Honor Guard to retire the colors. Once again, I want to thank all of you for joining us in Torrance.